With a career spanning over 20 years in learning and development, Keith Keating is currently pursuing his doctorate at the University of Pennsylvania's Chief Learning Officer program and has experience in a range of areas in L&D, from process transformation, instructional design, leadership coaching, and operations management. Passionate about human-centric problem solving, Keith has been utilizing design thinking to help Fortune 500 clients tap into understanding and resolving unmet customer and employee needs with a keen passion to help them prepare for the future of work. Keith, so great to have you here. Looking forward to what you have to say.
So thank you, David, and hello all. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and your evening to join us. So I'm really excited about this topic and about what I want to share with you today. In fact, it's something I'm very passionate about. It is actually the focus, my body of research in my doctoral program around this phenomena that we call the future of work and what's going to happen to us, and are we going to lose our jobs like we're hearing, and how do we help people prepare? And the reason that it's so exciting to me, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier for those that joined, is that this is an exciting profession for us to be in. We truly have the opportunity to impact and change lives. It's no longer that we're just delivering training and it's this transactional activity. We are performance improvement. We are learning and development professionals, and we are going to be shaping the future. And the beautiful thing about the future is that it's not yet written, but all of us together, we have the opportunity to shape it. What I want to do is I'm going to be sharing insights today into the current state of our industry. And before we get to talking about the future or even talking about today, I want to start by talking about yesterday. And for most of us, that's many, many yesterdays ago. So I want you to take a moment and think back to when you were younger, probably 3, 4, 5 years old, and think about the first time that you remember what you wanted to be. And here's what's beautiful is this is something we all have in common, because as kids, we all wanted to be something. And so maybe you wanted to be a pilot, or maybe you wanted to be a ballerina, maybe a chef, or a doctor, or for me, I wanted to be a superhero, particularly Superman, maybe you wanted to be Superwoman. And so I imagine that, like me, the career that you're in now wasn't your childhood dream. And I would probably go as far as to suggest that you weren't dreaming of being in learning and development, of being a trainer or an ISD. And it's not that these aren't great choices. I thoroughly love my choice, but it's because our initial exposure to what we could be was pretty limited. And so we didn't know what options would be available to us in the future. And I can remember that time about when I was 8 or 9 years old, when I realized that I did not have the skill set to be Superman. And there was this innate fear that I didn't know what else to be at that point. And I can remember that even being that young. And for me, I didn't know what I wanted to be for many years. And sometimes you still ask yourself that. And I bet that you probably experienced kind of that similar moment of that fear of not knowing what that future holds for you. And the reality is, if you think about that fear, we're not alone in that. And when we think about the workforce of the future, one of the first challenges that we have is that people don't know what opportunities will be available to them. They don't know what else they can be because they don't know what's going to exist or what type of skills are going to be required in an age of automation. And in fact, our workforce is worried about this. According to PwC, there's an estimated 40% of our workforce that's worried about the future of their jobs as a result of automation and robotics. 40%. So it's no wonder that they're worried, though. So if you just take a quick look, and you've probably seen some of this or you've watched movies, but just doing a quick search on the internet, we're going to have these seeds of fear that are being planted that make us wonder, will robots take our children's jobs? Or are we prepared for when robots take our jobs? or claims being made that robots will destroy our jobs and we're not ready for it. And then there's these estimates that I've seen being thrown out as well, like automation could kill 73 million US jobs by 2030. And then stronger prophecies like robots may steal as many as 800 million jobs in the next 13 years. And then my favorite one that I've seen, you will lose your job to a robot and sooner than you think. So if this is what you were seeing, no wonder you would be scared. I would be scared too if I didn't understand the context behind this, because these headlines are scary. And then you've got other statistics being thrown around without understanding the full context, like McKinsey stating that today, 5 out of 10 jobs are automatable by adapting current available technology. 5 in 10. And then they say that 2 out of 10 employees are in occupations that may shrink, and only 1 in 10 are in occupations that are likely to grow. So again, I'm not the only one seeing this. Our workforce is seeing this. So it's no wonder that they're scared. And then if you just dig a little bit further, McKinsey also estimates that 30 million jobs in the US may be at risk. Now, it's not just the US that is going to have this issue. In fact, it has a much further reach, impacting the globe with an estimated 400 million workers being displaced. Of those 400 million, the US accounts for 23%. So when I first saw this, I'm not a mathematician, but I just started playing with the numbers a little bit. And I did your simple division, 23%, 400 million, and it's actually not 30 million, it's 92 million. So just how big of an impact is it going to be for the US? 30 million, 92 million? So I've spent time digging a little bit further. And PwC actually says it's 38 million. But then the Organization for Economic Development says, don't worry, it's only 9 million. And then Forrester comes back and says, no, you're wrong, it's 24 million. Science Alert magazine says, simmer down, it's only 3 million. And then Oxford University rounds off all of our data by saying it's actually 47 million people who may be at risk. So we take a step back and we ask ourselves, what does this actually tell us? And the answer is, we don't know. We don't know how big or how small the impact will be. But what's important is whether it's only 3 million or whether it's 47 million, people will be impacted. And our workforce knows this. They're hearing the same confusing information as I'm sharing now. They know the same statistics. And here's where our job comes in. It's our responsibility as learning and development practitioners to help them be prepared. So, what can we do? We can start by focusing on what we actually do know. And what we know is that automation has a global reach that's transforming economies and the workforce today. This isn't something that's going to be starting tomorrow, it's happening right now. So if we look back through history, these types of changes are not new. In fact, technology has been evolving since the horse collar became universal throughout Europe in the 12th century. And then technology reached a new stage with the Industrial Revolution started in the 19th century. And then roughly like once a generation since then, we've got people in a near panic because technology is destroying jobs. And that is true. But if you look back at the agriculture and the manufacture changes, what we see is, yes, those economies did decline, but yet the rest of the economy continued to grow. So if history is any indicator, with these new changes, our economy will also continue to grow. And it is true that new technology destroys existing jobs, but that is not the end of the story. What we know is that new technology creates new jobs. So think back, well, none of us were around for this, but think back to the introduction of the automobile in the early 20th century. So before automobiles, we had horses and carriages to pull them, or actually carriages and horses to pull them, and then enter the automobile. And it absolutely destroys that industry. Killed tons of jobs. Lots of jobs were lost. But What's important is automobiles created jobs, but they also created change. Like they changed the streetcar to buses. They created new jobs and new industries like gas station attendants and repair shops, repair workers. And then indirectly, automobiles also addressed other latent needs by creating the possibility of living further from work. We had new towns. We now had travel and vacation that we all easily had accessible. So again, none of us were really around for that transition. So something that's a little more relevant in our lifetime is the introduction of the personal computer. So when this started to really become popular, it did destroy about 3.5 million jobs. But what we do know is that it created over 19 million jobs and growing every single day. And so that's a 15 million job initial net surplus of jobs that were created. And then here's the beautiful part of this. Many of the jobs that were created are ones that you couldn't have even fathomed existing before that technology. Like for example, a professional video game player, or a Kardashian. You could be a social media influencer now, or you could be a YouTube cat video analyzer. All of these are real jobs. Now, talking a little bit ago about when you were a kid and what you wanted to be, none of these jobs were on that list of what we wanted to be because they didn't exist. We didn't even know that it was possible. But this is what our kids are aspiring to become now, and these are real paying jobs. So going back to what we do know, we know that there will be a shift in the way that we work. So research firms like McKinsey and Company have been analyzing job activities. And what's beautiful is that this research is already available to us. And so they start analyzing occupations, the activities within those occupations, and then the requirements to function within them, and identifying which ones of those can be automated. So specifically, McKinsey's analyzed about 2,000 work activities across 800 occupations. And they've been able to identify activities that are easily automated or have the potential to be automated. So what we're going to see is that there will be a reduction in hours due to those automatable tasks. But here's what we're not focusing on enough. Having those hours reduced is going to give us time back so that we can be more productive in what we do best, applying our areas of expertise, applying our human skills, giving us that time back. Like, for example, for me, one of the most frustrating things I have to do at work is expense reports. It is laborious. I can't wait until that's automated. Or when we go to the doctor and we have to fill out the same paperwork 5 times depending on who we meet, that should all be automated. So I'm looking forward to having those minutes and hours back based on that time. What's important though is for us to recognize the activities where the net loss is greater than the net gain. So specifically, what I'm talking about are the 3 on the right. We know that there are 3 activities that have the highest potential for automation: collecting data, processing data, and predictable physical activities. So this is basically common knowledge. We know this is where automation is already starting and will continue to grow. So what we need to do is, first of all, embrace this and prepare for it. So we take this information and we map it against job categories and activities. And what we've been able to identify is there are 2 distinct job categories. Those that we're going to see that have the highest increase in future demand, like teachers, social workers, data scientists, engineers, and those with the highest decrease in future demand, like retail sales, laborers, vehicle operators. And this is where we need to remain vigilant and focused, because the number of people in the US currently employed in the area where we're going to see a decrease is significant. It's currently 25 million. So thinking back to what McKinsey shared, we may not be too far off, or they may not be too far off, with their estimation of 30 million people being at risk. Now, while we're talking about the concept of the future, it may seem like this is something that's not going to impact us tomorrow and we don't need to necessarily worry about it today. The truth is, it's here and it's happening now. For example, you've got tool and die makers that are now being replaced by 3D printers. You've got customer service agents that are being replaced by chatbots and IBM's Watson. We've got forklift drivers who are being replaced by robots. Autonomous vehicles are on the road and being tested today. Although I'll tell you, I'm in the auto industry and I think it's going to be a bit further away than what we're hearing in terms of how quickly, but they are happening. We are testing it. It is out there. It will be the future. You no longer need to go in the bank to deposit a check, which I absolutely love. But as a result, we're seeing a reduction now in retail branch workers. And remember R2D2, well, his cousin is now replacing stock clerks in Walmart and a number of other industries or companies rather. So in theory, this might sound scary, but it doesn't need to be because we still do have time to prepare. This is the beginning of the transition and the transformation. And so going back to focusing on what we do know. What we do know is that there will be jobs lost. Absolutely. And we need to be open and honest, and we need to have dialogue about this. It could be as great as 15%, as McKinsey has estimated globally. But what we also know is that jobs will be changed. As machines work with us, beside us in the workforce, and allowing us to be more productive, AI, robotics, technology. But most important, as history has shown us, we know that jobs will be gained, including jobs that we can't even fathom existing today. The job gain could be as great as 20 to 30%, which would significantly offset those that were lost, just like we saw with automobiles and computers. But we don't hear about this. We don't hear about these statistics, the hopeful side of automation. And the reason for that is because fear sells. We live in an economy right now that is fear-based. And the reason is that it sells. Clickbait works. That's why it's out there. This is where we need to step in, because for us, planning and action is what's going to drive change and create the future. And it's our responsibility to take charge of the conversation and help prepare our workforce for tomorrow, starting today. So I know that's a lot of information I've already shared. This is just to share with you some statistics that are out there so that you know what people are seeing, what they're hearing, but then also understanding the concepts behind that. Let me stop here. David, any questions that have come up along the way that we should take some time to address?
Keith, I think we've all been listening with rapt attention, and
Perfect.
I'm wondering if anyone does have a question at this point. Otherwise, we'll keep moving on. And I hear a big echo. Do you hear that too, Keith?
You hear it when I'm talking or when you're talking?
When I'm talking.
Okay. I don't really hear it.
Good. Hopefully that will not be on the recording.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and
Yeah.
keep on because I want to just kind of pivot a little bit into a story, and I want to introduce you to a friend of mine whose name is Mary. So Mary is a 40-year-old single mother of two without a college education. She's been working in retail for most of her adult life, and she's fine with it. She considers it stable. She's been able to have consistent jobs. Now, Mary is dedicated. She's dependable. She's a team player. What I love about her is she's trustworthy. But today, her job is at risk, and it's severely at risk. Now, here's a little background. It didn't just start to become at risk today. Her job actually became at risk a while ago with this idea of self-service. So I want to just share with you a quick history about the concept of self-service. In the early 1900s, grocery shopping consisted of walking into a store and then you gave the list of items to your clerk who would go and find those items, they'd bag them and they'd bring them back to you. Now, I personally love that. It's kind of a sweet system. Maybe it's kind of the original Amazon idea where we just place our order and then it shows up to us. Now, this all changed in the 1920s. In the 1920s, there was a store that some of you might know in the South, it's still around, the Piggly Wiggly. And the Piggly Wiggly was actually the first store that introduced the concept of self-service. And they advertised it as a way for women to have more freedom while shopping so that they could pick up their own items at their own leisure. Now, this truly was just a general ploy for corporate cost savings to reduce the number of clerks that were required. And this was done under the veil of self-service, and they could pay them less. And so the idea of self-service has actually evolved in the last 10, 15 years with the introduction of self-checkout lanes. And it continues to evolve. And it's being advertised as an opportunity for a customer to save time. Now, while they might technically occasionally save time for the customers, it's truly a veiled attempt at cost savings by the retailer by reducing the number of cashiers needed. Now, for those of you who've actually used these, I find that they rarely save time. I always need an attendant, something doesn't scan right, someone doesn't know how to use it, so the line is backed up. It's pretty frustrating. But it is a threat to that industry because there are companies like Home Depot in California, they're starting to replace a significant number of stores with actually all self-checkout lanes. And of course, in New York and San Francisco, you've got the Amazon Go store. So the trend is still growing. Now, the fact is, Mary isn't alone in this threat of self-service automation. So she's just one person in over 8 million people that are currently employed in the US that are relying on us, learning and development professionals, to help prepare them to be able to navigate this ambiguity, this uncertainty of their job future. And so the question is, how can we help them? And the answer is that we need to start by taking a step back and looking at ourselves, looking at our industry, and identifying how we need to evolve. Today, we're known as encouraging on-the-job learning. We're known as teaching knowledge and producing content, producing job-related content. We're known as the providers of learning. I've even heard some people refer to us as the owners of learning. And that's a lot of responsibility. Personally, I don't want that on my shoulders. I don't want to be responsible for someone else's learning. So what if we flipped this concept? What if instead of being the providers of learning, we became learning enablers? And we created connected learners that empowers and enables them to take control over their own future. That's the gift that we can give back to our learners, is giving them the power to take control over their future so they're not just relying on us. And we do this by focusing on skills instead of jobs. We need to identify the skills that our learners have today, and we work with our business, our customers, our organizations to identify what skills will be needed for tomorrow. And then we architect developmental opportunities to bridge that gap. All the while giving learners the opportunity to develop those skills while we're teaching them a critical concept. And that concept is how to build effective learning habits. Identifying skills, creating opportunities to develop those skills, and helping them build effective learning habits. Creating connected learners is how we're going to prepare today's workforce for tomorrow. So I want to drill down and I want to talk about these in more context, but I just want to do a quick check and make sure there's no other questions that popped up that we should address.
First of all, one of our listeners is suggesting the book Linchpin, Are You Indispensable by Seth Godin. And then also Mitchell's making the point that at some stores you can even walk around with your own barcode scanner and purchase right off the shelf.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Kroger's.
And then also Jim is asking, isn't learning and training in danger as well? Recorded presentations, movies, knowledge bases, etc., self-learning instead of self-checkout.
Good question. In my opinion, we are one of the few areas, I think, where we're going to really, really continue to grow and thrive. With that being said, we have to evolve, just like other industries. So the question is, are we at threat? I don't know that I would agree with I would use the word threat. I would say that we have to evolve to be able to meet the evolving needs of our learners. And so that's where we're kind of in danger. And we need to evolve from just being training to actually being learning and development. But beyond that, we have to help bridge that gap for our learners. So for example, when we look at retail or the industries that are threatened, those individuals don't know what's coming. They don't know what else to be. They don't know what to plan for because they don't have access to that knowledge and that information. And that's where we step in, because we need to be having those conversations, doing our due diligence, our research to find out where those gaps are so that we can help them prepare to fill those gaps. And I'm actually going to drill down about that coming up in just a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on for now, just in the spirit of time, and then we'll come back to some more questions. So I'm going to drill down into these areas, but first, I want to take a deeper look at the concept of skills. And I want to start with the skill difference between artificial intelligence and our own. So it's important to recognize that AI excels in the linear and repetitive tasks. Absolutely. But we excel in the creative. AI is strong in problem identification, but we are strong in complex problem solving. AI provides information, we find meaning in information. And in the future, AI will be leading the machine industries. And that is okay because we're going to be leading the people. And although robots are becoming more human-like, and Hollywood and the media might like us to think that someday they're going to replace us, luckily, they're not human and they cannot become human. And so we know that in the future, we're going to be spending less time on those predictable functions like physical activities, collecting, processing data, where machines are already better than us. So let them do what they do well. And we focus on the skills that separate artificial intelligence from our own, the skills that make us human. And those are our higher order cognitive skills. It's the skills that give us the ability to connect with our patients, our customers, through empathy and interpersonal skills, or our complex problem solving skills that allows us to think beyond linear as the robots do. We've got our creativity, our logic, our emotions, our originality. These are the skills of the future. These are our human skills. And that's what we need to be focusing on with our talent. And so one of the first actions that we need to take is to start having conversations with them to help them identify their current cognitive skill sets. And so we can use a tool like a skills barometer that helps us capture where they are today. It also helps us capture what skills they are interested in developing further. And then we can turn that into a heat map. And that helps us identify where the gaps are within our organization. And then we can turn that into a short-term development plan to help them grow, but also help to close those gaps for the organization. And really, this is my belief. We can't just leave this to HR. There are a lot of organizations where learning is part of HR. There's a lot where learning is not part of HR. We can't expect that somebody else is doing this. We have to help drive the conversations within our organization, within the industry. And so another output of identifying current skills when you're having that discussion is helping our talent uncover the concept of transferable skills. And this is going to be one of the most important concepts that I can share with you that we need to really embrace and be sharing within our industries and with our talent. Transferable skills, for those who aren't familiar, are those core set of skills and abilities which can be applied to a wide range of different jobs in different industries, otherwise known as your portable skills. Now, when we have people who are worried, who are fearful about what am I good at? If I lose my job, I don't have anything. I don't know what else is out there. I've never done anything else. When they're fearful of this, we can help motivate them by helping them recognize their transferable skills because everybody has them. For me, I was fortunate enough to uncover that concept very early in my career. And again, for those of you who were on the call at the beginning, I was sharing with David that one of my other careers was a dancer. And luckily, I had transferable skills as part of that, as part of my career before then, that I was able to use to transition into other careers. I'll give you kind of an example. I was looking for a new job, something that's a little bit stable, and I came across an ad for, and I'm going to date myself, but for a Microsoft Office 2000 trainer. And so when I saw the ad, it was in a paper at that time, I looked at the skills that were listed in the requirements and I basically wrote them out and then I matched them to what I knew how to do. And the job title itself was intimidating, and I really didn't know what it meant to be a trainer, but I knew how to use Office 2000. So I thought, well, how hard could it be to actually teach it? And as you know, it turns out that it's actually a little bit challenging to become a trainer, but nonetheless, I was adaptable and I eventually became good at it. In fact, I would say that my overall success in my career has been because of the concept of transferable skills and not letting job titles intimidate me. And I still don't, although I would say that when I do peruse LinkedIn, there are still intimidating job titles, but you look past that and you look at the heart of what it is that that role is actually looking for. And when we focus on jobs or job titles, we're potentially alienating a whole host of qualified talent who are not aware that they have the skills necessary to perform those job functions. And so luckily for me, I didn't let that job title deter me. And then when I was actually transitioning out of being a trainer, there was this other job I had heard about and that I was very attracted to, which was change management. And it turned out that I was fully qualified for it and I excelled in it, even though I didn't previously have that title of change management. So that's why understanding the concept of transferable skills is such an important gift that we can be sharing with our talent. And so for me, I don't focus on my functional job title. What I am is a problem solver. And that's my skill set. And it's transferable regardless of the company or the industry. And the truth is, there's a lot of freedom and security that comes along with that awareness that we really should want everyone to feel. And so the same applies for my friend Mary. She's not just a retail sales clerk. When I look at what her capabilities are, she's got customer service skills. She has self-awareness. She's creative. She knows how to do number, work with technology. She's got people skills. Those are transferable to a whole host of other functions and industries. She's just not aware of that. And so we can help her and the rest of our workforce by starting to identify the skills that are needed for tomorrow. That's going to be a huge effort for us. And so we can accomplish this several ways. The first is that we need to capture ongoing market data that helps us prepare for these emerging skill needs. Now, one approach that you could follow is something that DXC Technology is using. And they gather predictive data through supervised machine learning, and it analyzes job boards and publications, and it combines that with keyword business parameters that they look for in their organization. And they actually have data scientists that use statistical analysis and probable theory and blah, blah, blah. A lot of us don't have access to any of this. I do love what they're doing, but I think it's pretty limited in scope. So what we can do, for those of us that don't have access to data scientists or supervised machine learning, we can tap into research that already exists today. And it's free and it's fully available, like from the World Economic Forum, which is really the top place that you should be researching. You've got information from Forrester, Burson, McKinsey Global Institute, publishes a lot. We should be curators of this information. It's our responsibility as learning development professionals to understand this information and be able to transfer it back to our workforce to help identify the future trends, the future skill needs, and the gaps that we have. So that's one area of focus. Now, that's external research. So additionally, we can also be conducting internal research, and this is extremely valuable. So one of the most important opportunities for us is we all have access to our business or customers, and so we want to gather their input on future skill needs. And they may not understand that terminology, and so we can pivot our terminology and we can ask them questions like, what gaps do you see? What are the strategies that you have in your organization for the near future? How's your business evolving? What are some of the barriers that you have for performance support? And how can we help you? And so one of the ways that you can get engagement that we're using at my organization, GP Strategies, is we've created a skills advisory board. And what we've done is we invite all of our customers to participate. We bring in learning and development professionals. We bring in business partners and in the business lines, and we bring in external subject matter experts. And we meet on a regular basis and we have these conversations where we're looking at, hey, who's doing what in terms of future skills? How are you evolving your organization? Is it working? What are some of the trends you're seeing in your organization? And it's like a think tank. And really, we're staying ahead, or we're trying to stay ahead of these needs by having these conversations on a reoccurring basis. So we've talked about external research, internal research. We've got some insights. So now what we need to do is tap into the trends from an organization perspective and an employee perspective. And we need to help close that gap. We need to make this personal and help our workforce, help them understand why. Why are we doing this? How can we actually inspire them? And that's one of the challenges that I'm seeing from organizations is they're recognizing, yes, future skills is important. We know we've got to upskill our talent, but what happens when they don't want to be upskilled? How do we convince them that they need to participate in this? And so the message to our team is critical. It needs to have that personal connection. So it's not just top down. It's not us talking to them saying, hey, you've got to go out and get upskilled, but it's got to be inspiring and motivational so that they recognize that there's a personal benefit here. There's a future gain here. Otherwise, why would they even engage in this? Why do they care about skill development? So I want to share with you, Citigroup has done a great job of this. They created a Be More campaign, hashtag Be More. And so it was intended to enable and empower employees to become better learners and contribute to the environment, to the culture there, to help Citi become the best bank by demonstrating the personal value that they feel that they have and to help motivate each other. And so they started this campaign that focuses on understanding employee perspectives, and they focused on really three key aspects. They created this idea of employee idea jams, giving employees the opportunity to brainstorm on how they would solve this type of challenge. And then they would craft messages and stories around different personal growth examples. So again, it's not that top-down approach. It's actually from all of your colleagues, and they're sharing how they're learning, developing, growing, and the value of it. And then there's also daily challenges that they've created, self-improvement challenges. And so they had this calendar that they were pulling from. And so it's a really great campaign. You can just Google it. There's some case studies out there on it. This isn't the only one. It's just one that I find that is attractive and I think has a really good meaning and good story behind it. So now we've identified our current skills. We've identified some future skills. Here's an important part, because we can't expect our employees to develop the skills completely on their own. We've got to architect and create opportunities for those developmental experience. And so there's a couple of approaches I'll share with you. So one is the concept of a stretch assignment. And this isn't revolutionary. It's not earth-shattering. It's been around for a long time. We just aren't really using it in organizations. And a stretch assignment is a project or a task that's just outside of their comfort zone. It's not enough where they get burned out when they do it. It's not part of their merits, and that's important. They're not to be judged on it. And so it's like an opportunity for our learners to really fail fast and learn from that experience in a safe environment. Like a concept of an internship or picking up a new project. But again, it's just something where they're not judged on it. For someone like Mary, it could be a role swap temporarily with maybe a self-checkout lane attendant. She could manage an intern or a volunteer so she could build up her managing skills. She could maybe even create an internship or volunteer program, or she could coordinate maybe an in-store event. But again, it's just an opportunity to develop a new skill set that you might not have been using before, and so that you can continue to grow. Now, another opportunity is architecting those opportunities and storing them in a place like stretch assignments or opportunities that you're creating where our workforce knows to go to find them. So, for example, you could use SharePoint or a social network or an intranet page and create, the concept is it's a digital skills exchange platform. And so really it's a database that has all the possible professions or occupations, and it could be just for your organization, but it also could be for the industry. If you know that you're going to be going through a mass layoff, you want to give employees the opportunity to maybe swap industries or look outside your organization. So it's got this database. It has a course calendar showing where, when, and how the skills are delivered. It's got an index of employability associated with each of those occupations or professions. And then, of course, the skills that are required to work in those professions. So an example I want to share with you of this actually in practice is Intel's Development Opportunity Tool, otherwise known as a DOT. So this is an internal platform that Intel has created and uses where every manager, actually every employee has access to this, and managers can post short-term developmental opportunities that employees can access. And so the value of this is that it creates a two-way skill visibility between managers and employees so that you can see what skill set your employee may be going to learn and develop and bring back. It also offers this, what we call best fit development, because it gives you the opportunity to find resources in areas where you may not have even known they existed, because now you can have access to them through this platform. And then it also helps make the manager benefit more clear so that you can, again, identify those skills that you might be looking for. So as a manager, I might have identified that there is a certain skill gap in my organization. I can post on the platform for someone to join temporarily or long term to fill that gap. Excuse me, need a drink of water. So while I'm having some water, why don't I just stop here for a minute and see if there's any questions that we want to address?
Keith, I would ask you, can you give some examples of what these opportunities might look like?
Sure. I mean, it just depends on, now, are you talking about the example right now for development opportunity tool?
Yes.
It could be my passion, this is not true, but let's say my passion was in data analytics. I love running reports. I love analyzing data, but that's not my job. But it's a skill set that I have, and I want to feel valued to my organization. And so I can be perusing through there for another group that's saying, hey, we need to find a data analyst who's somebody that has this skill set that they want to transition over even on a part-time basis. And so part of this is not looking necessarily for swapping full-time, but to create opportunities for internal stretch assignments to be building up while you currently have your job. So basically it would be almost a negotiation with your manager to say, hey, I've got this skill set, I can take 20% of my time to go and learn about this different organization in the business, build up some skills further, and then bring those back to the organization. So I would say it's open to it can be anything. It can be, you've got somebody in learning and development and they want to move to sales. So it's helping them transition through there.
Cool, thank you. And then one question from Mitchell, and I think one more after that. Would you like to comment on the need for an individual to have a change mindset?
Absolutely. I would say hold that thought. I'm going to come to it in a few minutes. Very good point, though.
And then one more thought, which maybe
Critical.
we can also hold, but we'll see.
Go ahead.
Once again, tools such as the development opportunity tool would replace an L&D job performing at least some portion of a coaching position.
Um, I guess you could look at it that way. I actually see it more as complementary, but it depends on how your organization is structured. I think that even when you are able to tap into that talent, it may not be a one-for-one fit. So you may need to coach them through being able to learn that talent. But I could see that that could put some potential at risk. Risk is, I think, a strong word, but yeah, I think it's a fair point. Good question, good comment. Okay, so we've talked about internal development opportunity tool. So another one that's extremely important that I think is often overlooked is when we may not have the skills in our organization. So we can use the dot and we can open for data scientists, but if we don't have those, we need to then look externally. So when we're missing that skill gap, one of the usual responses is to go out and hire a new resource with that skill gap. But what if instead of really robbing our current talent of the opportunity to get upskilled, what if we created external developmental opportunities for our current talent to gain those new skills and then bring them back to the organization? So it's similar to the dot, except you're not going internal, you're going external. Like allowing an employee to participate in an internship program somewhere else with a trade organization or trade school or even another organization. So something that Procter and Gamble did with Google is they created a digital marketing talent exchange swap. So it was a month-long job swap where they upskilled employees in a new organization to, again, get those skills in that industry, that organization, and then bring those skills back. And what was really a really great example of this and why they did it is they were already partners in terms of working together, but there was a big gap between the way Google understood Procter and Gamble's business. So what a great way to build up that partnership, then have individuals swap those jobs. So I just think that's a really great example of something that we could consider kind of evolving away from just going out and hiring new talent, but giving our current talent the opportunity to learn. So the idea really is simple. Whether through strategies like a stretch assignment or digital skills exchange platform or external partnerships, we want to be creating opportunities for our employees to practice second skilling. And this is a concept that I think we need to continue talking about and advocate for. And second skilling is the ability to develop new skills while you're in your current job, not waiting until you're already redundant or made redundant or on the path to redundancy. So helping our talent develop these skills today while they're still working. So we've talked about identifying current skills, future skills, bridging the gap between to create developmental opportunities. To round off our connected learners, we need to help them build effective learning habits. So the concept in general of being a learner has shifted. And this goes back to the point that somebody was just making a little while ago. No more is the concept that we go to school, we learn a profession, a trade, and then we do it. We execute it, and then we retire. That no longer exists. In order for us to be agile and adaptable, we need to learn, apply it, and then potentially unlearn it, and then learn it, apply it, and then maybe there's a rest period, and then learn, apply, repeat. This is the cycle of a lifelong learner. And as Toffler once said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And this is a critical concept for our talent. Just like this aligns with that idea of change mindset, which someone else was just sharing. Our modern careers are like a nonstop conveyor belt. You've got to keep moving and learning no matter what stage you are in. Being content is a mindset that puts us at risk. If we think about how quickly industries or business or technology is evolving and changing, that content idea, that's how our employees get left behind. And so we've got to be instilling this idea of being a lifelong learner, which helps them be agile, adaptable, and most importantly, it helps them be ready to fill that next organizational gap. Because the truth is, we don't really know what it is going to be yet. We can research and we can talk and we can help identify some theories, but a critical component is the agility, the adaptability, the flexibility, the change mindset, the growth mindset that's going to help empower our workforce. Now, additionally, to build effective learning habits, we need to include context for our learners. Context shapes the learning experience. Context helps our learners construct meaning based on their own experience, and it brings learning closer to that real world work. That helps lead to performance support, to stronger performance support. Context is critical. Context is the truth of learning. It's the reason why we're there. That helps our learners put it into perspective so that it's real for them, so that it's relevant. We also need to help our talent recognize the need and importance for practicing reflection by reinforcing the idea that learning is more about engagement and discussion than just the provision and consumption of content. And this is where we have to step in, because for these three, for lifelong learning, for context, for reflection opportunities, that's our responsibility. As we're the ones that are creating the training, the learning, the development, we're creating these opportunities and experiences. We've got to build in the opportunity for reflection exercises and ways for them to apply it in their context so that we can give them the opportunity to build those learning behaviors and habits. And then on top of that, and I know I'm sharing a lot, there's a lot that we're responsible for, but as I mentioned at the beginning, that's why our roles are so important, because we can have such great impact. But with that becomes a lot of responsibility. And so equally as important is that we need to teach our learners how to analyze information, because more employees are collecting and analyzing information to make decisions as part of their roles. And it's estimated that less than 40% of employees are able to effectively analyze information. And that leads to poor performance and greater organizational risk. And so it's no wonder that that's an issue when we look at the amount of information that's out there. That's already, we are at an average of around 10 hours a day in consuming content, whether it's our mobile phone, our laptops, our iPads, our computers, the TVs. It's a lot of content. Now, I didn't believe this, so I actually turned it on my iPhone for a week, and turns out that I was actually averaging 5 hours a day just on my phone. So I was pretty disappointed in that. But at the end of the day, we need to help our learners understand and digest this information. There's a question that I find that I get asked often is, how can we build training materials rapidly enough to catch up with the pace of organizational change? The answer is, we cannot, and we should not. It's not our responsibility to constantly be creating information. It is our responsibility to be curating the information so that we can help our learners understand how to access the right information, transform it into usable formats so that they can digest it and analyze it. And that will help them build effective learning habits by being able to analyze that information. So when we started, I was thinking about what you wanted to be when you were younger, ballerina, maybe a doctor, Superman. And I doubt that any of us said that we want to be an L&D. We didn't say, I want to be an HR director, I want to design learning, because we didn't know that was a possibility. We didn't know what skills would even be required for that. And so by creating connected learners, we can help Mary and the 20 other million people who may be at risk, who are not aware of the valuable transferable skills that they already possess today. They're not aware of the possibilities that they can be. We can give them the opportunity to build those experiences and new skills so they do not have to continue to live in fear about the future. The truth is, nobody should be living in fear about the future of their jobs. Our call today and our call to action is to evolve from being learning providers to learning enablers so that we can help employees help themselves. The reality is there's work for people today and there will be work for people tomorrow, work that we don't even know that's going to exist yet. And so as Malcolm X once said, tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And so today, we need to start taking control of the conversation, being honest about the conversation, the fact that jobs are going to be changing, there will be jobs lost, but we can prepare for it. And rather than thinking of this concept of human versus the machines, we're going to lose our jobs, they're going to take over the world. Technology is not going anywhere. It's going to continue to grow, and it has the ability to help us. So we need to evolve from humans versus machines to humans and the machines, which is going to be our future blended workforce. So with that, we're going to stop now for some Q&A. I know it's been a lot of information, a lot of different strategies. I know we're right at the top of the hour too. I'm happy to stay on for a little while longer to have some more questions and answers. Please make sure that you also add me on LinkedIn so that we can continue this conversation in that space. I'm very active there, sharing information, but I'd also like to hear from you and your stories and your progress and journey. So I'll stop now and turn it over to questions.
We do have some questions from Eric. I appreciate your pro-human attitude. Do you ever find that employers are more of the mindset that they just need to get rid of the old people and get new ones that have the desired new skills?
Oh, I mean, truthfully, absolutely. Businesses, unfortunately, exist to make money, especially if they're public. They have shareholders that they're responsible for. So we hear about the massive layoffs all the time. That being said, we can have some influence in changing that direction, but not a lot. And even if they're going to be doing massive layoffs, our job is just beginning at that point, because I fully believe that part of our job is preparing those individuals who will be going through the layoffs. And so if we know that there is an industry at risk, like for example, retail sales workers, we know that absolutely retail sales workers, there will be a portion that will be losing their jobs over the next 20 years. Now, these types of changes aren't going to be overnight. So I believe that the organization has a responsibility to help prepare those individuals to be upskilled into other areas that can either transition into that organization or help prepare them elsewhere. There are some companies that do a decent job with providing support after someone has been laid off. I think that we still have a lot of growth in this area. To answer your question, the answer is yes. I do believe that that is an aspect of businesses, but our job is to help prepare our talent regardless, whether they're staying with our company or not.
Here's a somewhat related question. And also people are saying it was a great presentation. They loved it. This is from Aaron. In your estimation, what percentage of companies are engaging in this type of upskilling?
I would say we're very much in the infancy. So there are a lot of the big names right now, and personally, I feel they do it for notoriety. So you've got Google, you've got Microsoft, you've got some of the banks, You can almost just Google, go to Google and just do future skills organizations upskilling. There is a company that I recommend doing a little bit of research on, and it is General Assembly. And General Assembly, I believe, is doing it right. They are creating initiatives, not just for organizations, but also within communities. And communities are critical. That's where our success is going to be. I don't think that it is truly 100% the responsibility of an organization to prepare for future skills. I think that there is a bit of government approach, there's a bit of the individual approach, so we have to absolutely be lifelong learners. There's an organizational approach, but there's also a community approach. Because if, for example, you have the Midwest and you've got a lot of what I'll call blue collar jobs, for lack of a better word right now, and you're closing down plants because they can be automated elsewhere, that's going to significantly cripple that community. And so there's no value or benefit there. And so I think it's community, it's government, it's individual, it's organizational. We all have a role to play in this. So the answer to your question was, there are some groups doing it right. I think they're just starting, but more often than not, this is just a conversation that is just beginning, and it's going. We've got a long, long way to go. But check out General Assembly and just Google them and look at some of the work that they're doing with big organizations in terms of helping them prepare.
And it looks like if you've got time, Keith, we have one more question. Are you up for it?
Absolutely.
All right, this is from Joshua. Where/how do you think cross-cultural understanding training fits into this upskilling? Certainly with developing empathy and emotional intelligence, but do you think there is a need to be more specific in this kind of training?
I think absolutely. So part of the future is going to be remote work. It's skills-based economy. And when you think about the skills-based economy, that cultural fit is going to be a huge challenge, as well as remote, because it's a new concept for a lot of organizations. I think that empathy is one of the top skills that's going to be required. Design thinking is extremely valuable. It's only going to continue to grow because as a problem-solving methodology, design thinking starts with empathy, with learning about your audience, and we don't spend enough time with that. So answer your question is yes, cross-culture is critical, remote working, skills-based, and then global. We're just going to continue to grow as a global workforce, and understanding that the cultural differences and nuances is going to be imperative to our success in that skills-based economy, and is probably the challenge that we're seeing right now with a lot of global organizations, or organizations trying to go global, but more often than not, they're still thinking local. I've worked with a number of organizations where they have global, regional, and then country or local, let's say, learning divisions. And the reality is that global division is still heavily influenced by whatever country they're dominated from. And we've got to move past that. So the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. Cross-cultural is very important.
It is looking like we've got all of our questions answered for the time being. Thank you, everybody, for joining and participating in the presentation. And Keith, thank you very much for sharing with us.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Please do add me on LinkedIn. Let's continue the learning and sharing there. And have a good night.